Joshua, I don't know if you guys know this, but Joshua was 80 years old when he went into the promised land. He was around 40 years old when he spied out the land the first time, which means that Joshua grew up in Egypt. 40 years. Which means he was under the oppression of Pharaoh and he felt the heat of being a slave. He also watched Moses march into Pharaoh's court, and the 10 plagues, he was in it. The flies and the blood and the gnats and all that stuff. He would have also been in a house where the blood of the lamb was smeared over the threshold. Right? When the death angel passed over the houses that were covered with the blood, he would have been in that house. He would have taken of the Passover. He would have been chased by Pharaoh to the Red Sea and watched the Red Sea split in half and walk across it. He was there for all of it. And that's really important to know as an adult. So, for 40 years, he is in Moses' shadow and he's being forged into a leader. And it's in those unseen places, you guys, that Joshua learned very crucial lessons that would prepare him for what lay ahead, which was what your homework was, right? His 3 lessons. That's our outline for tonight. So, number 1 lesson was what? The power of prayer. It says, then Amalek came and fought with Israel at Rephidim. So Moses said to Joshua, choose for us men and go out and fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand. So Joshua did as Moses told him and fought with Amalek, while Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. Whenever Moses held up his hand, Israel prevailed, but whenever he lowered his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands grew weary, so they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. And Aaron and Hur held up his hands, one on one side, one on the other, so his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. And Joshua overwhelmed Amalek and his people with the sword. Okay, that's our text. Where is Joshua in this story? Let's picture the scene. Joshua is where? In the valley, and Moses is where? On the mountaintop, the valley and the mountain, right? Now, Bible students, Joshua, this is his first mention. What do we know about Joshua just from this story? What is he doing? He's fighting, right? He's a warrior. And who is his opponent? Amalek. Okay, now tell me why they went to war with Amalek. What was Amalek doing to them? Attacking them. Okay, and specifically, who was the target of Amalek? The stragglers, the weak ones, right? The ones that were weary and in the back. Amalek is a type of the flesh. He is all the way through the Bible. Anytime Amalek comes up, it's always the flesh. It's always this flesh versus the spirit. In our story, it's Joshua and Israel versus Amalek, right? Galatians chapter 5, verse 17 says this. Write this down or be a fast flipper. Either way, Galatians 5, verse 17 says that the desires of the flesh are against the spirit, and the desires of the spirit are against the flesh. For these are opposed to each other to keep you from doing the things you want to do. The spirit and the flesh are opposed to each other. They're fighting against each other. Galatians tells us through Paul that our flesh and our spirit are always at war. But the battle that rages between spirit and flesh is not won on the field, in this case with Joshua and Amalek. The victory is credited to what was happening on the hill above the battle, right? What gave Joshua the upper hand? Right, Moses held the staff, right? Because whenever Moses' hands got weary, then they were getting overtaken, and vice versa. Prayer is the picture of this story, you guys. The mountain of intercession brings victory in the valley of interaction every single time. Below, the war raged, but above, his hands were lifted up, right? And he is lifting his arms up on behalf of somebody else, and we call that intercession, when you're praying on somebody else's behalf. If you don't know that word, write it down. It's a doctrinal definition of your faith. You should know it. Intercession is a type of prayer. There's many types of prayers. There's prayers of thanksgiving. There's prayers of confession. There's prayers of needs. There's all kinds of prayers. Intercession is specifically the act of praying on behalf of others. And it's super important. Now, back to our Joshua story, Exodus chapter 17. Watch for the correlation, you guys. This is really cool. Between the sword in the valley and the hands on the hill. Check this out. Look at verse 17 with me. No, chapter 17, verse 11. Check it out. It says, whenever Moses held up his hands, Israel prevailed. Whenever they dropped, what happened? Yes. And so they propped old Mo up, right? With his hands in the air. They propped him up. They helped him out. And so it says that Joshua overwhelmed Amalek with the sword. Do you guys see that? Prayer made the sword effective. Even though Joshua was a fierce warrior, he was losing the battle if those hands were not in the air, right? So what was happening on the hill gave victory to Joshua. Without prayer, Joshua could do absolutely nothing. This is his first lesson. Now, flip with me to Ephesians chapter 6. Ephesians chapter 6, because Joshua and Ephesians are buddies. Okay, so check it out. In verse 17, watch the correlation between prayer and the sword. Okay, check it out. Verse 17. Paul says, you get the helmet of salvation, which we're going to skip for tonight, but it's super awesome and you need it. The battlefield of the mind, right? Being sober-minded. Gird up the loins of your mind, Peter said. Remember that? My favorite verse. Okay, helmet of salvation and what? The sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God, okay? I love it when the Bible gives the answers, like right there. You're like, oh, I got it. Word of God with all prayer and supplications. To that end, Paul says, watch this, keep alert with all perseverance, making supplication for all the saints. If you are praying on behalf of all the saints, what are you doing? Intercession, right? Because you're praying on behalf of somebody else. And Paul says, check this out. Since you're praying for all the saints, can you throw me in? He says, can you pray for me also? Check it out. Pray for me also that words may be given me in opening my mouth boldly to proclaim the mystery of the gospel. What's Paul saying? He said, listen, In our armor, we have a whole bunch of defense in our armor. You only have 2 offensive things, parts of your armor. You have prayer and you have the word. That's it. Everything else is defensive to be able to stand against the wiles of the enemy. But your prayer is long-range artillery and your sword is hand-to-hand combat. And they're offensive. What's Paul saying? He said, listen, I'm going out to preach the gospel, but I need you to pray that my words would be effective. I need you to pray so that my sword will work. Even he knew that. Pray that my words would be effective. And that's exactly what's happening in Exodus chapter 17. It's super cool. Now, our greater than Joshua fights our battles, but he also intercedes. And these are by far my favorite verses, 100%, because Hebrews 7:25 says, consequently, he is able to save to the uttermost. You guys know this one? He is able. Who's been to the uttermost? Me. I have. And guess what? The Lord is able to save to the uttermost those who draw near to God, since he what? Since he always. How often is always? Which is how much? There it is. Always lives to make intercession for us. That means every day he wakes up. He probably doesn't wake up, but just go with me. Every day he wakes up and he lives to make intercession for me. Did you know that Jesus prays for you that much? How wild is that? That Jesus lives to pray for you. And whose ear does Jesus have directly? The Father. Do you think those prayers are heard? Yes. How rad is that? Now, everybody turn to Romans chapter 8. Because no joke, I'm not kidding. This time. These are my favorite verses on prayer specifically. Listen to this, you guys. Don't read too fast. This stuff is super cool. Look at Romans chapter 8. It says, likewise, the Spirit does what? Helps us in our weakness. For we do not know what to pray. Anybody? When you are in trials, when you are in hardships, when you're in something way over your head, it is hard to even articulate what it is you're supposed to be saying, praying for, asking for. Right? It says, we do not know how to pray as we ought, but the Spirit does what? What? Did you know the Spirit also intercedes for you? Now, hold up. That's 2 out of 3. The Spirit intercedes, check it out, for us with groanings too deep for words. For he who searches hearts knows what is the mind of the Spirit, because the Spirit intercedes for all the saints according to the will of God. This is why I love this. When you do not know how to pray, and you're in hand-to-hand combat, in the valley, going at it with Amalek in spiritual warfare, which we do, and we do not know how to pray, guess who takes over? The Spirit. He takes what we cannot articulate, and he translates that, he zhuzhes it up, and then sends it ahead to the Lord. Now, what's cool about that is we do not know how to pray. He does. So he takes our groanings, Paul says. Sometimes you can't get anything out but a groan. You don't know what to say. You don't even know how to articulate it. So he takes it, he zhuzhes it up, he sends it to the Father according to his will. And then an answer comes back. Right? Now, what's interesting is most of the time when the answer comes back and you get the letter in the mail, you go, I think you got my mail crossed with somebody else because that is not what I asked for and that's not the answer I wanted. Right? Sometimes that happens. Why does that happen? It happens because we cannot articulate it. The Holy Spirit makes all these edits with red pen, sends it to the Father. The Father says yes because that prayer is according to his will, and it comes back and we go, what? That is not the answer I wanted. He's like, yeah, but that's according to my perfect will. You see, it's rad, you guys. Now, this is what's awesome also, is that this is the context for the verse that everybody takes out of context. Look at the next verse. Look familiar? Look at what Paul says next. And he's in the middle of a thought. He says, and we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. The context of that verse is, listen, that answer that comes back down when you cannot pray, you don't know what to pray, and the Spirit intercedes for you and sends it to the Father, and the Father sends back an answer according to his will, all things work together for good. Of course it does. Because the Spirit's interceding for you and Jesus is interceding for you and the Father, they have the ear of the Father and a perfect answer comes back. And guess what? It's your good. Whether we know it or not. Wild. Right? Crazy. That's why most of the time all we can say is, you know what, Lord, actually, not my will, but your will be done, because only he knows. And that is what's cool about this. If you don't know how to pray, the Spirit will take over and your prayer will be perfect and it has the ear of the Father. It's probably not what you said, but that's fine. Okay, learned lesson. Power of prayer. It's awesome. Exodus chapter 33. Go over to that with me. Exodus chapter 33. Check it out. Now Moses used to take the tent and pitch it outside the camp, far off from the camp, and he called it the what? Yes, and anyone, whoever wanted to seek the Lord would go out to the tent of meeting, which was outside of the tent. Whenever Moses went out to the tent, all the people would rise up. This kills me. Each would stand where? At his own tent door and watch. What is going on? Right there watching. Watch Moses until he had gone into the tent. When Moses entered the tent, the pillar of cloud would descend and stand at the entrance of the tent, and the Lord would speak with Moses. And when all the people saw the pillar of cloud standing at the entrance of the tent, all the people would rise up and they'd worship, each where? At his own tent. Okay, that's fine. The Lord used to speak to Moses how? Face to face, as a man speaks to his... This is a wild verse, you guys. When Moses turned again to the camp, when Moses was done with his face-to-face conversation with the Lord, and he would go back to the camp, his assistant, Joshua, the son of Nun, a young man, would not depart the tent. Do you guys see this? I love this. The focus on this text is usually on Moses, what's going on with Moses. And he exemplified what it meant to have this intimate relationship with the Lord, something the rest of the nation of Israel trembled to do. They were terrified of the Lord. If they even acknowledged him at all, it was usually in some sort of fear-based something. Now, question, where did the people watch and worship according to verse 10? Where are they standing? At their own tents, right? Watching from afar. They're completely intrigued with what's going on. They worship the Lord, but they're standing each of their tents. In contrast, though, Moses' relationship was what, according to verse 11? A friend, face to face, right? For Israel, Jehovah was awesome and powerful and fearful, this God of Sinai. But here is a first mention, you guys, and it's worth writing down. It's a first mention of God, the omniscient, all-powerful creator God, as a friend. First mention. Specifically, Moses' friend. That's wild. It really is. Moses' friend. Now, we are in Exodus, so if you back up to the beginning of Genesis, which we did together, and think about the Lord all the way, this was a very intimate relationship that he had with Moses that was so far exclusive to Moses. Now, where is Joshua? Right there with Moses, lingering at the tent, right? He's standing right there, which, by the way, all of Israel was invited to do. Anybody who wanted to seek the Lord could have come to the tent of meeting, but they all stood at their own tents, except for Joshua, at least that we know of. Joshua is lingering at the tent. He's eavesdropping on a conversation between Moses and God. What? Just pause. How wild is that? That's crazy. Now, we are familiar with that because of Jesus, which we're going to talk about in a moment. But imagine being Joshua. How wild would that be? That would be wild. The Lord was there at the tent. So Joshua was there. Even when Moses left, Moses is like, check it out, Joshua, see you later, see you at lunch. And he's like, yep, gonna hang out here. Joshua learned to love the Lord's presence. He lingered at that tent. Without abiding, Joshua could do nothing. Now, the presence of the Lord was precious. It was amazing. And it's the same relationship, as you guys know, that we have with the Lord. Turn to John chapter 15. Go all the way over to John chapter 15. These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be full. And what things is he talking about? You have to back up to verse 1 and come down. How is our joy full? Abiding, right? That's how you do it. You abide. And if you're attached to the source, then you're going to be fully satisfied. That's what he's talking about. Look at verse 12. It says, this is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down their life for his friends. You are my friends if what? You do what I command. No longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what the master is doing, but I have called you friends, for all that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. What is he saying? Listen, you're not my servants. The servant-master relationship is not friendship. The master does not tell the servant what's going on. The servant just obeys without knowing what's going on. But that's not what it is with us. You are my friends if you are obedient to me. And everything I know, I'm passing it on to you because you're my friend. That's crazy. You are my friends if you do what I command. Obedience is the way that we prove our love, right? That's what 1 John's all about. You obey what I'm saying, and that's how I know that you really love me. It's the same idea. Listen, you are my friends if we're really in this together. If I'm going to be your Lord and Savior, then you're also my friend, and it's crazy. The mark of a friendship with the Lord is obedience, but a friendship is extended to us, and it's intimate, and it's awesome. And it's radical. Now, that brings us to the final lesson of the night. And it's super important. The currency of heaven is faith. This is what Joshua is all about. So number 3 lesson is what? The requirement of faith. Okay, that takes us to Numbers chapter 14. Flip over there. So 2 years after leaving Egypt, Israel reaches the border of the promised land. Okay, they spent an entire year at Mount Sinai, so that took up a lot of the time. The rest was travel time. You're now 2 years in, and it's there that Moses sent in the 12 spies. 10 come back with a horrible report. And 2 come back with faith, right? So, question, you guys tell me, according to Numbers 13, 31 through 33, which is in your homework, how did the spies perceive the promised land? What's the report they brought back? Yes, giants in the land. We're kind of like grasshoppers. They're way cooler than us. They're way stronger than us. Like, we're toasted, you guys. I mean, these grapes are super cool, but that is about it. Forget it. We're out, right? That's basically what they said. There's fortified cities. They're very large. They're very strong. They devour their inhabitants. We are grasshoppers. Okay. Question, also from your homework, Numbers chapter 14, verse 1 through 4. How did Israel respond to the 10 spies that came back blubbering? What did they do? We're gonna die! We're gonna die! That's it! Turn the ship around! We're going back to Egypt! We don't care. We're not going. They flipped out, which is completely in their character, right? That's what they did. They lost their mind. Now, look at verse 6 through 9, which we are going to read. Numbers chapter 14, verse 6 through 9. It says that Joshua and Caleb, right, are 2 faith warriors. Joshua and Caleb, they're among the ones who spied out the land, right? They tore their clothes and said to the congregation of Israel, you guys, you dopes, you whiny babies. That's not really what it says. The land which was passed through to spy out, it is exceedingly good land. It is, huh? If the Lord delights in us, which he does, he'll bring us into the land and give it to us. He already promised that he would. Remember? Genesis chapter 12. And so on. This land was theirs. It's flowing with milk and honey. Look at verse 9. This is super important. The things that Joshua and Caleb said to the Israelites. Check it out. Number 1, do not rebel against the Lord. Right? Denying the promised land that the Lord had promised them was a straight rebellion to what the Lord told them to do. He said, cross the Jordan, take the land, conquer and settle. It is time. It is yours. He said that I don't know how many times. From Genesis 12 to this moment. He says, do not rebel against the Lord. Number 2, do not fear. That's super important. Do not fear the people, right? For the land, for their bread for us, he says. Their protection is removed from them. Is that true? Yes. We're going to see that in not too distant future when we run into Rahab here in a couple weeks. She's going to tell them how true that is. Listen, their protection is removed from them. We have the upper hand. And the Lord is what? With us, so do not fear them, right? Listen, when the Lord is on your team, you have a majority. You know that, right? The Lord is on our team. We have the majority. He has already given us the land. It's already ours. But they feared. They were afraid to go. They were afraid to walk. They were afraid to trust. Fear, you guys, kept them out. Fear crippled their walks. Fear stole the abundant life that was awaiting them. Took it all away. And Joshua learned in this moment that fear is a lack of faith. And faith is required. Without faith, well, it's impossible to please God, Hebrews says, doesn't he? Joshua is learning this lesson. This is so important, you guys. Perspective is everything. Now, I had you look at a couple stories. I love these stories, first of all. But 2 Kings chapter 6, there was a story. We're not going to read it, but I want you guys to answer some questions because I'm assuming you guys did your homework. If not, you have more reading to do because you got to go back. This story is epic. It's the story of the chariots of fire. Who read it? Okay, good. Who didn't read it? Okay, go do it. Great. Okay, this story is epic. Okay, so I'm going to have you guys help me out. Who in this story acted or reacted in fear? The servant, because he said, "Oh no, my Lord, what shall we do?" It's a direct quote. Who had faith? Elisha. He said, I bet you this is going to be familiar. Do not fear. Those who are with us are more than those that are with them. That is a classic verse right there. Now, this is what's wild about that is the servant and Elijah in the same dirt? Are they looking at the same thing? They're in the same situation, the same circumstance. What's the difference? Perspective. Perspective. The servant's perspective was on the Syrian army. Elijah's perspective was on the army of hosts that were behind them. Same ground, same circumstance, but perspective changed everything. because one had horizontal eyes and one had vertical eyes. One had fear, one had faith. That was the only difference. So the Lord didn't even get to use the cool ninja Lord of Hosts guys. They get used in the next chapter, but he blinded them and took them into the city and gave them a banquet and sent them home. It's cool. That story is rad, you guys. You got to read it. Okay, second story is my favorite character. And you know that's true. That's not even a lie. Who is the second story about? Peter. Yes, Matthew chapter 14. Now, here's what's cool about this, because I'm going to ask you this question. Who had faith in that story? Peter. He said, Lord, if it's you, right, tell me to come out with you on the water. And he got out of the boat and he walked on water, right? Who had fear? Peter. Yes, because it says that when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink and said, Lord, save me. Remember that? I love this because you guys, sometimes we toggle within ourselves hour by hour, don't we? We're in the same situation, and sometimes we're relying on our fear, sometimes we're relying on faith, and we can toggle. The difference with Peter was it was the same storm, same waves, same characters, same day, same hours, same everything. One was horizontal, that was fear, and one was vertical, which was faith. It all depended on what he had his eyeballs attached to. The waves or the Lord. Perspective. It's true. So, it's amazing that we can look at the same thing and the same situation and the same trial and the same obstacle, but perspective changes the very landscape of what you're looking at. If you're operating in fear or operating in faith, it can literally change the lens of what you're looking at, even though absolutely nothing has changed. And that's what happened with the spies. You have all these spies that came back. They all saying the same thing. They all went to the same dirt. They all were spying on the same thing. They all carried the same grapes. 10 had fear, 2 had faith. Psalm 27 verse 1. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? I love this because those attributes of the Lord, that he's light and he's salvation and he's our refuge, our strength, our stronghold. If we can keep those attributes at the forefront of our mind, it helps us. Speaking of the helmet of salvation, you put the helmet of salvation on, reminding yourselves of the attributes of the Lord. It will be a game changer for the battlefield of the mind. You remember who the Lord is. That's what you do. 2 Timothy says that God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and a sound mind or self-control, right? If ever fear is the emotion you feel, you can take it to the bank. It is not of the Lord. Fear is not a tool the Lord uses. It's not in his, even in our shaping and our molding. Fear has no part in the Lord. He has not given us a spirit of fear, which is why the word tells us 365 to not be afraid. Because fear is a faith killer. And faith is the currency of heaven. Prayer, abiding faith. They're huge, you guys. We should know these. These little cameo appearances of Joshua through the wilderness are epic lessons, and he's going to need every single one of them when he crosses into the Jordan. The wilderness was not wasted on Joshua. He learned all these things, and he needed all of them because he had a blueprint coming ahead where these things would be necessary. So take heart, you guys. Should you feel like you're wandering in circles, which poor Joshua got sent back into the wilderness for another 38 years, and it was not even his fault. Okay? That's what happened to him. He's wandering around in circles, but perhaps the time when we feel like that is happening, the Lord is preparing us for an adventure on the horizon if we have eyes to see what he's trying to teach us. So, learn the lessons in desert places. That's what Joshua did. And when the time came for him to cross the Jordan, he was fully equipped. Okay? And next week, we're going to be on the pages of Joshua, I promise.